Kaspar, we are living in a time that everything is more and more expensive.
Yes.
And also, what I have in front of me here, our cup of coffee, is getting more expensive. Or not?
Your cup of coffee, yes, but the coffee itself is not.
No, I think that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about coffee.
Yeah, we talk about coffee, and we will show you a couple of things. First of all, that the coffee is not expensive at all at the moment. We will show you a chart of over more than 40 years.
Yeah.
We will give you a little bit of history about the coffee. We will also give you some examples how you can invest in it.
We'll give you some health tips about which coffee to drink.
Yeah. Martin will do that because he is the biggest coffee drinker of us all.
Yes.
So, but we will close down with the with some examples that you can use in your portfolio.
Your investments. Yeah. I think it's extremely interesting what you showed me. We always prepare these videos, and you showed me a chart of 40 years, and then we put it in the screen a little bit later. But you can see that the price actually. We talk about inflation and core CPI and all this complicated things, and it's been going on about this. And today we said we're not going to talk again about the same thing. We're not going to talk about the rate hike of the Fed because it's in every newspaper. So we're going to talk about coffee. And it's funny that the price isn't actually that high, no? Of the coffee.
Not at all.
No.
And we close down with a company, a share, that is up this year, 10% up.
Yeah, that's also
positive things today. Positive things. We close down with that.
Are you going to tell us something about the history?
Yeah. The history.
I know you like
books,
history.
Yeah, the history books are a little bit different. I think if you go into a certain country, you have some other history than another country. But the general opinion is that it was for the first time discovered in the 10th, 11th century in Ethiopia, and then a lot of pilgrims went to Mecca. That was a little bit later, and they were drinking coffee in that area, and they came back and they introduced it in other parts of the world. Mm-hmm. And there is a story that two monks, they had some coffee with them, and they walked with the coffee, and it was raining, and the coffee was wet, and they were sitting down at the fireplace, and they put the coffee beans in front of or even in the fireplace, and they came after a couple of hours, and then it was burned, and then that was the first coffee was made.
And the next day it rained again, and then they drank the drips, no? And then
yeah, but that's...
I'm imagining it myself how this went, but I think it's interesting.
The first coffee shop, we are from the Netherlands,
from Amsterdam,
so it's the coffee shop we were talking about coffee, was in Venice, and it was in 1615. Mm-hmm. And then around 10 years later, there was the first one in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
And then the Dutch, they took the plants, the seeds, in the 7th century, late in the 7th century, to Indonesia. Mm-hmm. And there, because the climate was much better, you can't.
You put something in, it starts growing already just looking at the ground.
Yeah, you can't do that in Amsterdam, but in Indonesia and in the islands Celebes and in Sumatra, there were really big coffee fields. And then the mayor of Amsterdam, he made a big mistake. In 1714, he gave to Lodewijk the 14th a present, and that was a little plant, a little seed, a little plant of coffee. A couple of years later, some friend of the king, he went to Martinique, and he was planting the coffee seeds over there. And it wasn't even a plant because it survived the whole trip.
The whole trip.
Yeah, it was a plant, and 50 years later they had 18 million plants that they were building there, and then it went from there to the south of America.
Interesting stuff.
So the Dutch made a mistake, 1740. No, that's a joke, but that's a little bit of history.
Very interesting.
And then, before I give the word to you about the different types of coffee and how you can invest in it, do you know? Yeah, you know now, because I told you before, the most expensive coffee in the world is the kopi luwak.
Still in Indonesia.
It's in Indonesia, yeah. And why is it so expensive? Because they produce only between 200 and 250 kilograms a year. And do you think, you also know, but when I was in Bali, Indonesia, 5 years ago, did you think I had one small cup of that coffee?
I think you had.
Yes, I had. I was with a group and nobody else wanted to do it because it was expensive. I don't know how expensive it was. I think was not more expensive than the coffee nowadays here around the corner. No. But for there, it was really expensive because it's an animal
that eats the plant.
And then it comes out, and there they make the coffee of. And I even saw it's some kind of cat. They call it also some kind of cat. They call it Luwak, and that's the most expensive one.
Yeah, I think it's good that you've done it. It's an experience.
Yeah, I was reading about it and remembered. Hey, I had one coffee of
you
Kopi
can also
Luwak.
say that you had the most expensive coffee in the world.
Yeah, so the what's happening with the coffee?
Yeah,
Martin,
yeah.
this year?
So that
Tell
is
us a little
definitely
bit about
not
it.
one of the most common coffees, because there's two main common coffees. There's Robusta coffee and Arabica coffee. And today, maybe it sounds silly, but we didn't know what we were drinking on the office, and we drink quite a lot here. But we drink Arabica coffee. And
Is it good or not?
No, it's not good. And I think the 90% of our viewers are also drinking Arabica coffee, because it's the most drunken coffee in the world. But if you look at the differences, so you have Arabica and Robusta, I would recommend you, as your personal guide, that you start drinking Robusta coffee. Why? Because it has slightly more caffeine. For a lot of people, drinking coffee in the morning is to wake up. So that's you have a better effect if you drink Robusta. It's slightly bit more bitter, so that if you don't like that, that is obviously a reason not to do it. But the Arabica coffee has much more fat in it, 60% more fat, and also a lot more sugar. So it's very important to realize that if you can reduce something in your diet with 60% less fat, then I would suggest that's a good thing to do that, right? If you go a little bit further, to produce it, Robusta coffee is cheaper to produce, of almost half. It grows harder. It produces on one plant more coffee beans. The plants itself, the Arabica plant, is approximately 4 meters high, and the Robusta plant almost 6 meters. So that's the explanation why it's cheaper, because on one Robusta plant you have more coffee beans. Going on about the health reasons, if you look at Robusta, it has much more antioxidants, which are good for your body, of course. So you need to take also that in consideration. So,
where do we buy that?
Robusta coffee. Yeah, well, our colleague Taco, he already went to our coffee distributor and said, we want to change from Arabica to Robusta, so we're going to test it.
Well, we still have, I think, 30 bags.
Yeah, he can take them back, because I don't want it anymore. Now, but if you look at it, it's obvious that we drink Arabica coffee, because the Amsterdam mayor that gave this plant to Lodewijk, he probably gave an Arabica plant, because 75% of the production in the world is Arabica.
Where's it coming from?
And it's mainly coming from Brazil. If you look at the Robusta coffee, it's more coming from the southeast. So the main producer of Robusta coffee is Vietnam. So for you to understand differences, Arabica coffee is nicer for tasting. It's better. It's in that sense, it's more common. Robusta coffee apparently is slightly better.
I think that he gave then the one that was producing already in the east, and then the French made the other version.
That's probably they mixed it or whatever, they created it. But and then I think I continue straight away. If you want to invest in either of those two coffees, if you look at the two charts, so I have put the futures, a continuous future, because you have different options to buy it. You can do it via stock, which Kaspar will explain. You can buy or sell a future. If you sell a future, you think that the coffee price will go down, or you can buy an ETC, which is an exchange-traded commodity. It's similar as you can buy an ETF on the S&P 500 or the London Stock Exchange or whatever. It follows the price of the Bloomberg sub-index coffee index. So, but that sub-index basically consists of futures. The only advantage of doing it through the ETC is that you don't have physical delivery, and you can purchase that ETC for 29 euros per unit. So it's a lot cheaper. If you look at the in this case Arabica future, you need 10,000 euros of margin on your account. And one thing is really important to bear in mind: it's physical delivery with these futures. And you will say, okay, physical delivery, how is that possible? But if you have one future, you have the physical delivery of 17,000 kilos of coffee, 35,000 pounds. And where is that then delivered? In any port. You have the Antwerp port, you have Miami, Virginia, New York City, and it comes, so basically boats come in with bags of coffee and you have to pick them up there. It's quite odd, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
I didn't realize it, but I literally have here in front of me the spec sheet of the Chicago exchange where those futures are traded, and it's physical delivery. With the Robusta, the contract size is slightly smaller, but also still 10,000 kilos for one future, and the margin on that contract is 2,000. So, but if you want to benefit, I would say if you want to just buy coffee, the etc. Of course, there's a fee there of 0.5%, etc., to make that product. But it's in the end it's the same, and it's more easy for you to invest in coffee. It's 29 euros, and you have one linked product to the coffee price.
Can you also go short in it?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, so and futures in general are of course high risk products,
because
with physical delivery,
Yeah, but I think I don't want to go into it too much. Do you think we should? Or
but no.
I think but it's good that you say that to warn people.
Yeah.
Because you also, it's a future contract. I looked at the continuous, but if, for instance, the September contract already expires on a certain date in August, so you might think, okay, it's not done yet, but it's already done.
I think it's if you only should trade. And not even invest, but trade in those futures if you really understand the products.
Yeah, and if you are,
of course,
for instance, working at the company that you're going to talk about.
Yeah. So you said, okay, you can trade/invest in futures, ETCs, but you can also, of course, go watching for individual stocks. And there's one really important and nice stock, and that is 10% up this year, 10% from 27 to 30 euros.
It's a 30% outperformance on the average index.
Yeah. So in the last months, we were always every 2 weeks we highlight a stock that goes up, and of course it's related to the sector mainly. And this company is called JDEPeets. And JDEPeets is that came on the market in 2015 with the merger of Douwe Egberts and Mondelez, and in 2019 they acquired Peets, so that's why the name is JDEPeets. And they are the biggest in the world if you look at companies that produce single coffee and tea. And they have 50 brands like L'Oréal, Douwe Egberts, the Dutch
Marcia
version.
here in Spain.
Yeah. So they are the biggest producer. And I think it's really interesting to see, because the coffee price went up around 16-15% this year, but their share price also went up. So they do something in a good way. So, or they see that their cost price is up, and they increase their commercial prices also, and the people keep on buying it, or they hedge their positions, or they do both. But they do something good, I think.
They manage it properly, very well.
And if you look a little bit further, if you dive a little bit further in the company, as we always do, and we don't say you have to buy it or not, but we only want to highlight the biggest player in the market, I think. And they have a earnings per share of around this year. Of course, there are still some estimations in it of €2, so that makes a price earning of 15, and that's quite interesting. And the outlook for the coming years is the market, the analysts expect a little bit more revenues, a little bit more profit, not that much, but a little bit more. And if you look at their assets and debt, they have around 22 billion of assets and 4 billion, a little bit more of debt, and that's going also the right way. So the assets are going up, and the debt is a little bit going down. And they also give, and that's also quite, I won't say unique, but interesting for investors, is that they pay out dividend around 76 cents on a yearly basis. So
it's not bad, no?
It's 2 point something % of dividends. And I think it's also, of course, they work in a coffee environment, in a tea environment, and they produce coffee in countries that are where the situations for the workers are not always that good, and they have a social response target figures, and they want to be at the end of the year on 80%, so everything that's produced
socially responsibly.
And in 2015 the goal is 100%, and the clean energy that they use is already 40% of their whole production process. So I think it's a company it's in a challenging environment if you look at those two factors. Definitely. But they do their best, and I think they succeed in it. Also, the board consists of a lot of women. That's also they're really
that's important.
So they're really I think on the social scale they are performing very well. So coffee prices up
this year,
but the price of the coffee beans compared to 40 years, the price in the late 70s, 77. The price was higher than now. So what you also see, they go up and down.
Yeah, no, definitely. But this is some sort of like fixed cost of living price for this product, I think.
Yeah.
And everything that is then added on top.
Yeah.
It's just somewhere going somewhere, just like the petrol price.
Yeah. So if you see the chart, then you can create your own vision. Do you want to buy it? Do you want to short it? Futures, be careful. Only do it when you understand the product. Also for the C, but it's a little less risk. And of course, individual stocks. And we just gave an example of one of the biggest players in the world. So maybe you can buy that stock or buy invest to hedge your coffee.
Yeah,
because we had a figure. We are in the Netherlands with 17 million people, and on average 6.5 million liter is consumed a day.
Yeah, that's half a liter per person.
Only, and so we drink a lot of coffee together, and we know you explain which coffee we should drink.
You should always drink Robusta coffee.
Yeah. That's it.
That was
Thank you for watching.
See you next week.
See you next week.